soul, and so on and so on. But okay, you know what's my answer to these right-wing guys who want to dismiss ecology as pseudo-apocalyptic vision? That unfortunately they have their own apocalypse, which is double, their own apocalyptic vision. One is, of course, the one that I already mentioned. European civilization is under threat now, immigrants and so on. And the other aspect of the apocalyptic vision that I already mentioned, LGBT, feminism, and so on, all that stuff. So they also speak the language of apocalypse. So again, we don't get one apocalyptic discourse. We have a conflict of apocalypses. And here I remain a classical Marxist. This, when every phenomenon that you analyze, always try to isolate in what sense it includes its own, I don't want to use the term contradiction because it's a very precise term, let's call it, it's antagonistic, its own opposite tendency. And I even, and this, what I will improvise on now is not a criticism in any sense. I think that this would be my point, for example, allow me a brief improvisation, and this is my dream, as you know maybe, to do just this introductory improvisation and to skip the talk itself then, you know, so it's like to have a burger but only with lettuce and so on, with no meat, you know. Okay, let me go on.
They can tell you that.
Sorry?
They can tell you that now.
They're already doing it. I was told that Burger King already had now a hamburger without meat and so on. Okay, let's not get lost. You know, why am I for LGBT plus or transgender? Precisely what fascinates me so much is a certain immanent antagonism. The official, let's call it, ideology of LGBT plus is something that I, without any irony, benevolently, would have called Judith Butler historicism. Gender identities are not biologically determined, it's socially, historically constructed through performative discursive gains and so on and so on. Okay, but what fascinates me so much is that, and I know many of them, all those guys who actually make transgender operations, they speak a language which is exactly the opposite one, which is an brutally, openly, I use this term prohibited by today's discourse theory historicist, essentialist language. Repeatedly, persons who, for example, underwent this painful operation from man to woman, I noticed how almost always they use this term, I'm so grateful that now finally I live in a body into which I should have been born. The language they speak is one of pure essentialism, in the sense of it is as if there is a basic sexual orientation inscribed into my, whatever we call it, soul, but there was just in my birth an ontological mistake, as it were, I was born in a wrong sex. Now, I don't think this is simply ideology. That's crucial. I think that precisely the reference to psychoanalysis, German idealism, and so on, allows us to explain in a materialist way how something which is contingent can nonetheless be experienced as your predestination, as a necessity. As we learned from Freud or from great German idealists, your truly free decisions are not conscious decisions. Your conscious decisions are rather superficial. You are, am I doing something wrong? No. I thought you are, I thought I felt like Khrushchev on Crimea when Brezhnev was making a plan to depose me. Sorry. Let me go quickly on it. What I want to say is that just, if this sounds to you something abstract and so on, allow me to use my eternal old examples. Isn't it that the highest free acts are precisely always experienced as necessity? For example, let's say your country is occupied, you have to join resistance. You do it because you feel that you would betray yourself not doing it. It's not a choice in the sense of strawberry cake or vanilla cake or whatever. It's, I do it because I cannot do it otherwise. Or, a more pathetic example, think about love. You fall in love. You never fall in love. In the sense of, I'm looking around, nice lady or nice man here, there, let me make a choice. No, all of a sudden you realize that you are in love. The decision is never made in the present time. And what I'm saying is that this LGBT essentialism makes this clear. If you want to, in a trans operation or just in a more superficial way by cross-dressing and so on, if you want to change your sexual identity, it is, we can account for it nicely, how it is still a contingent-free decision of yours, but it has to appear to you as a necessity. Why? Because it's a radical decision. Or usual decisions, like, do I choose, I don't know, this type of water or Coke or whatever, there you are already constituted as a subject, and you just make choices. But radical decision is where, in a pathetic sense, you choose yourself. And again, that's all I'm trying to do. What I don't buy in the usual LGBT plus ideology is this happy free-floating identities, you know, like I can be multiple identities. Today I'm gay, tomorrow I'm heterosexual, then I jump here and there, and so on and so on. No, they underestimate terribly the pain, the traumatic decision of assuming a certain sexual identity. And the greatness of transgender is, for me, precisely that it brings us very close to this radical level of freedom. Okay, but let's not get lost into this. Just let me go back to apocalypse and to the choice of, to the